The Raspberry Pi 5 is really fast. It has a new processor called Broadcom A76 quad-core which runs at 2.4 GHz. But if you use a good CPU cooler and the official power supply, we can make it even faster by overclocking beyond 3000 MHz. In this video, I'm going to show you how to overclock your Raspberry Pi 5. Now for this project, you will need a Raspberry Pi 5, CPU cooler. I'm using the active CPU cooler, the official one from Raspberry Pi, and the official power supply, the latest Raspberry Pi OS on a micro SD card, spare micro SD card for flashing the firmware, and computer running Windows or Mac OS or Linux operating system. Before overclocking the Raspberry Pi 5, make sure you have installed a CPU cooler. Now, otherwise, it might get damaged. Alright, so this is the fresh copy of Raspberry Pi OS running on Pi 5. First, make sure your Raspberry Pi 5 is updated to the latest firmware. You can check the firmware version by typing a command in the terminal. If it's not updated, you can use Raspberry configuration to do it. Now open a terminal and type this command. Choose advanced options, select bootloader version and pick the latest one. Now this will update the firmware. Now after that, restart the Raspberry Pi 5. Now let's overclock the Pi 5. Open the terminal and type a command to edit the configuration file. If you notice, we are using a new method called overvoltage delta instead of overvoltage. The delta method adds voltage on top of the current level. Here, we are using 50,000, which is equal to 0.05 volts. Then set the arm frequency to 3000 MHz and save the changes by pressing Ctrl+O and Ctrl+X to exit. Then reboot your Raspberry Pi 5. Now to check the overclocked speed, type this command in the terminal. It will show 1500 MHz at first, but it will use the maximum frequency when the CPU is stressed. Now you can see your Raspberry Pi 5 is overclocked to 3000 MHz, providing a stable experience and improved performance. Now let's try to overclock it even further, 3.3 GHz. Now unfortunately, the official firmware does not support overclocking Raspberry Pi 5 beyond 3000 MHz due to the limitations. To fix that issue, we're gonna flash the experimental firmware. Simply head over to this link, download this zip file and extract the contents. Now go ahead and connect the spare SD card and open the Raspberry Pi imager. Choose no filtering, select OS and erase the SD card. Now once it's done, copy the extracted files and paste them onto the SD card. Now power off your Raspberry Pi 5. Eject the SD card that has the Raspberry Pi OS. Insert the spare SD card containing experimental firmware and turn on the Raspberry Pi 5. In a few seconds, you will see a green light start blinking and on your monitor, you will see a green screen. Now once you see that, wait for 10 seconds, then power off the Pi 5 and eject the SD card. Now insert the SD card with Raspberry Pi OS and turn it on. Then type this command to check the firmware version. Now let's overclock to 3.3 GHz. Now open the terminal and type this command to edit the configuration text file and scroll to the bottom and add these new lines. Notice that we're not using over voltage delta due to some issues. Instead, we will use the legacy over voltage and set the value to 8. Then set the arm frequency to 3300 MHz and enable turbo mode. Now once done, save the changes by pressing Ctrl+O and Ctrl+X to exit. Now reboot your Raspberry Pi 5. Then open the terminal and type this command. Now it will display 3.3 GHz. And that's it, the Raspberry Pi 5 is overclocked to 3.3 GHz. I tried running Geekbench, but it's not working as expected, and I always get with segmentation fault error, which is kind of annoying. At 3.3 GHz, you may experience significant performance improvements in terms of opening and closing applications. The system UI feels much faster. Unfortunately, this doesn't provide a stable experience, and you may encounter system freezes and random reboots. Now, because of this, I underclocked to 3.14 GHz and I noticed no issues. The Pi 5 runs like a charm. Overall, I would say you can overclock Raspberry Pi 5 to 3.3 GHz, but this leads to system stability issues. So 3 GHz and 3.14 GHz are the best overclocking limits for sustained performance. And that's pretty much it. This is how you can overclock the Raspberry Pi 5. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching. This has been KSK Ryo. I will see you in the next one.